Good morning, evening, afternoon, middle of the night, or whatever time of day you're listening to. I'm Alex. This is the Lost Souls Podcast, and let's hope that this time this actually works. I don't have to re-record this, because this is number 3. This is take number 3, but they say third time's a charm, so hopefully it works out. And today, I want to talk about structuralism, or the importance of the structure of something, the foundation of something, the base in something. And to start with this, what I want to talk about, let's see, the other time I recorded this, I got completely derailed on another topic, and we will see if it ends up going there again, because I'm not sure. But to start, I want to talk about the ways that people process information, right? So one way to preface this, I want to say that there is not one way that people process information. We tend to go back and forth between one mode and another, right? It's just that I think people tend to lean into one or the other, and I don't actually think that one is better than the other. And I think if you're told that one is better than the other, you're being fed a fucking lie. Shoot me, I'm a free thinker. But I actually think that one of them is slightly more useful to me, but surprise, surprise, it's the one I use most often. I'm biased. What do you want me to say? So one way to think about things is top down, right? You think about things as they exist, I like pyramids. Pyramids are good ways to explain this. Right? So top-down processors look at the tip of the pyramid, right? They say, oh, well, that's how high it goes. That's what it looks like on top. And then they use that, either being told or as an assumption, to find some through line, right? They're like, oh, well, that came from here, right? And so this is the line, right? And what happens when you top-down process is that you actually miss all of the nuance associated with that, the idea that the conclusion you came to is I would say is not patently false, but is completely lacking the truth. And so if you leave out important information, is that really the truth? I mean, be honest. Is it really the truth? Because if you're not giving somebody the full picture, it sounds like a lie to me. But hey, what do I know about history class? But look, I think it gets people into trouble like that. And I'll probably get into it a little bit more at some point. But I want to first go over the other side, my preferred way to look at information, because that is bottom-up processing, to where what is first understood is not the end result, but the way that you come there. So you have an understanding of the base. Because think about it, right? If you have a pyramid, right, that top layer cannot exist without the layer below it, which cannot exist without the layer below it, which cannot exist without the layer below that, on and on until you get to the base, right? The base ends up being the most important part, and if you took out the base, the whole thing wouldn't stand, or it'd find a new base, right? Whatever the case may be. You know, if you with a pyramid, if you actually were able to cleanly just out the bottom, it'd fall into the next layer, but then that would become the base. That's what I'm getting at with that. But here's the thing. When you look at top-down processing, the only thing that gives you is knowledge. And I'm not saying knowledge is a bad thing. I'm saying knowledge isn't all of it, right? I think this is also the kind of problem with in some ways the problem with empiricism. I'm not saying empiricism doesn't look at the base and try to build from there, but what I'm saying is what it observes is this one thing, and from this one thing it starts to build inferences and look at one other thing and other one things, and so what you end up is building a web of things which were taken not from the base but from the top, and then you're trying to use that to infer the base, right? Instead of just looking at the base and trying to infer it from things like patterns or how they work, right? You're instead looking at it the other direction. I think that's patently false, and I think it leads to a lack of understanding. Honestly, I think that's probably the problem with college education systems today. This is why you get people who don't know what to talk about, who don't actually learn, who come from college and don't have any skills that they need. And they say, well, we teach you how to learn. No, what you teach people how to do is listen to what other people say and then get along with it. You teach people how to comply. Teach people to show up every day for however long. You know, show up and be consistent and do this. And, oh, actually, you need to do internships too. So you need to spend all your time. Well, you got your working time and you got your studying time. In between all that, you shouldn't have time for anything else. And it's like, what about my fucking life? I want that too. Because what gets pushed down your throat is the idea that you don't get to have one. That's even with like see, this is always getting me derailed. Economics always derails me. Or my view on economics always derails me. So let's get back on topic, right? Structuralism. When the base of something is faulty, the whole thing is faulty, right? It's like code, right? Because I've actually worked with coding a little bit. I've put my hand in a lot of different baskets, right? I am not one thing, I am many. Jack of all trades, master of none. And that's how I'd rather be. Because I think that diverse knowledge is more important than specialized knowledge. Because it is the only way you get to be an independent human being. Does that make sense? Like, there's even like a whole... I've got an issue with authority, too. I've got a big problem with authority. And this all ties into that, because authority would say a top-down processing is how you listen, because you don't question it when you're listening to what they say and using that to draw your conclusions, right? When you're just trusting what's being told to you. I grew up in an environment where my brain told me that, hey, authority can't always be trusted. You need to make your own decisions. And now, when I walk around in the world, I see that kind of control and need for everywhere. And yeah, I'm probably seeing it to some promiscuous, like some excessive degree. I'm not going to lie. But that doesn't mean that what I see is false. Right? I see a system built on control that claims to be built on freedom, and I just don't see it. I just don't see it. You say freedom, but freedom only comes at the cost of money. So we're only as free as the money we have, right? And to get the money, are you really free? I mean, there are probably some people who feel free. It's the whole, well, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Well, it's really hard to find something you love to do. I like doing this, but it doesn't make money, as much as I wish it did. Wouldn't that be the dream? And it gets weird. Because there are pros and cons. Top-down processing doesn't create as much friction. Some people just cannot get along with something because they're told. You have to come across it and understand it, right? And then once I understand it, I'll come to my own conclusions about it. And if they're not what yours are, then that's how it is. I don't feel any need to have to agree with you on everything. But see, I don't feel the need to agree personally, but I feel the need to not express opinions where disagreement could happen. Why? Because it's not always conductive to cause issues. If you have an issue with everything you do, you're difficult, right? That's just how it works. But if you don't have an issue with anything, you're a fucking doormat. So where's the line here? What am I supposed to do? If I shut the fuck up, I hate my life. If I say something, I hate my life too. Where's the middle ground? I know it's kind of all or nothing thinking. You pick your battles and you choose, but it's like every time you choose a battle, it causes problems. There is no easy solution, and most of the time, there are pros and cons to both sides of something you're going to choose, and really, who's to say which one outweighs the other? Because you're the one making the decision, right? Sometimes people don't understand the decisions you're making because they haven't taken the time to structurally understand what you're making, or maybe you have because you want to make an informed and nice decision. Or if you're me, that's what I do. Right, I can break down problems and I think about them until I feel like I understand them, and then I engage with them. I don't feel safe with people because listen to me, listen to this shit, right? I sound like a fucking radical. I probably am a fucking radical. I can't go around just saying this shit all the time because I feel like it. Nobody'd like me. And even if they did, they wouldn't want me around. Oh, this guy again. Oh my God, we gonna talk about fucking economics again today? That might be what you're thinking when I go in here. He knows what he wants to talk about, he just won't say it. Which I do want to talk about diverse topics, just everything ends up coming back. Everything ends up coming back to economics, because you live in a country where economics are made to be all. Well, I'll talk about spirit sometimes too and religion, but they have the same issue. Religion has the same issue. Maybe that's where I was going, because top-down authority says that what the church says is true because the church says it's true. Well, this is the exact issue that people like Martin Luther had with the Protestant Reformation, right? It was the church trying to create a stranglehold on what God is and how people connect to him or her or it or whatever, right? I mean, I know that most people refer to God as he, but God is probably like nothing like that. God is probably, I consider God the all, which is everything, and the everything couldn't be divided into things like that. Does that, anyway. But when churches act like this, our way is the right way. And this is how, I can't say this is unique to just one church. This is how most religious organizations work. We hold the key. Only we're told the religion is the key, and we hold the access to the key. We hold the keys to the kingdom. Well, is that really... Well, first off, that was the issue with the Protestant Reformation, was Martin Luther saying the Catholic Church has become corrupt, trying to tell people things that God are that God is not, trying to say that God wants things God does not, right? That was Martin Luther's opinion. So he went and made his own church, said 99 Theses, here we go. Like nailing it to the whatever church's door. I forget. And that's what he did as an act of, defiance and rebellion, because he felt that the Catholic Church just wasn't doing its job right. It wasn't protecting the faith right. That led to a whole thing that people know about today, the schism, the Great Schism, I think. Or was that the Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox? Whatever, anyway. There have been a lot of divisions in the Christian faith over the years. I actually looked at all this stuff. And that's not just Christians. Like, every faith goes through stuff like this. It's not just Christianity, right? But the issue being that I think underlying what Martin Luther, like the idea of sola scriptura, has been perverted into something which says that the Bible is the only source of truth. I don't think that's true. I think you need room for lived experiences as well. I think you need room for spirit. I think you need room for the Holy Spirit, because I do think the Holy Spirit is real. I refer to her as Sophia, and that's what's been given to me, right? This is what I have experienced. This is like, I sound crazy saying this stuff, but like, this is the confirmation in spirit. This is real. That is real. That is a real thing, okay, that I experience regularly. That's what's scary about it. Oh, God, I get chills just talking about it. Well, I call it confirmation chills. And they're regular to the point to either I'm having massive seizures, or I'm having seizures multiple times every single day, and I'm just not realizing it. It's not causing brain problems, and there's nothing wrong happening. I don't feel scared or out of control with my body. Or there's actually something going on that appears to be something seizure-like whenever it happens, because this is what a lot of people say whenever they study, like, people who go through stuff like this, is like, well, I'm pretty sure they're just having seizures. They're having psychological, neurological problems. And here's the thing that I don't think makes sense about that is, if you were experiencing some kind of spiritual phenomenon, what in the world makes you think there wouldn't be a physical evidence of that? You're looking at the physical evidence of that, and you're saying, well, there's nothing special here. Okay, whatever you say. Okay, I would, Anyway, economics or spirituality. These are the two things I get derailed on. I start talking about one thing and it just to those somehow. Those are my things. Because I was talking about structuralism at some point, and now we're here. I'm trying to keep these shorter because who wants to listen to me rant and rave for like 40 minutes? I don't even want to do that. Although this is like, this is like an hour at this point. I've been talking, which I'm fine with. I can keep rambling, yapping to a camera by myself in my room. That's not hard. That's pretty easy. Despite what people may think, the hardest part is just doing it, because I'm like, oh my God, I'm obsessing about the background behind me, because look, there's a painting over there. This is my room. It's a blank wall. I tried putting shit up on this wall. It's not easy to put the shit up I have on this wall. I promise you. I tried 3 or 4 different things to put a tapestry up that I love. I've had for years, and I just got back because I left it. And I cannot, for the life of me, get it to stay up on that wall. Will I figure it out at some point? Yeah. But the other day, I just wasn't having any more of it. I'll pick it back up at some point. And that's the other thing, right? Now I'm getting into that. A lot of things, right? When you do a lot of things, it's not that if you fail, that you're done, right? It's that if you fail, come back and try again later, right? It's because I think, and I struggle with this, right? And it's in a lot of different ways, right? Because I was a gifted kid who never had to try. I was one of the gifted kids who never had to try. I didn't study for the first time, not even for the SAT, until I got into college. I didn't even study for my SAT. I got like a 1340 pre-whatever change, and that's like apparently good. Oh, they lagged on that. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to use that as some kind of like, oh, well, I'm smart as fuck. You know, IQ doesn't mean that much. And that's a shorthand for IQ, but I was IQ tested when I was a kid, and it was kind of high. Not like super, super, super high, not Einstein level, but it was up there. And that just is what it is, right? I'm the one who has to make sense of that. I'm the one who has to decide whether that's important or not. Not you, not society, not anybody else. Or I have to decide what it means to me, if it even means anything to me. Because here's the other thing: is just because I'm smart like that, it's a give and a take, right? I'm smart like that, in that way, right? But in other ways, I struggle when it comes to like relational. Like I would say, emotional, I'm catching up. As far as emotions go, I'm like catching up, right? My emotional intelligence is also kind of high. So my intelligence quotient is also kind of high. My IQ, if I had to guess, you know, I haven't been tested for this shit, you know, in a long time. I just IQ when I did. My relational intelligence, I think, was lacking. And I think there's a difference between emotion and relation, because I can understand emotions really well. I can recognize emotions really well without actually being able to connect to people, right? That is true. Those two things can be true simultaneously. Oh, back to structuralism, because I always get derailed. I don't even think I got back to structuralism. I think I just got off on another rant. And this is also what this turns into. Just whatever comes to mind. This is actually, you get to see in real time what my brain does. Jumps from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And I go like, where was I to begin with? That's part of the reason I don't talk sometimes. Oh my God, you don't talk? You're on here talking? Yeah, because I just put on the microphone and I start going, right? Most of the time, this is what happens, you know. And so I don't engage like I did. You know, it's easier just to be quiet and listen to people than it is to, you know, say something stupid. Or interrupt. Because here's the thing is, I'm scared to death interrupting people because I feel like I'm being rude. I go crazy. You know. Rude? Really? Just talking? Yeah, I feel like I'm rude talking. I feel like my existence is a fucking burden sometimes. Oh, not for me, for others. Anyway, and not just like the standard people, like everybody. Well, that's like a thing I can work on. That's one of the things I can work on. You know, you can't work on everything. I can work on that. That's a personal thing that, you know, is not true. That I can try to fix or get better. You can't hardly fix anything, but you can try to improve things, right? The goal is never to completely fix problems, because if your goal is to completely fix problems, you're going to get discouraged because it hasn't happened. The goal is to make better, right? The goal is to improve over time, even if it's slowly, even if it's just a little bit here and there. And that's something that people kind of need to realize. Oh gosh, I hate the way I look sometimes. My hair looks good, but just anything from like here down, just sometimes I'm disgusted by myself. No, that means I need to work on my own self-love. Yes, it does. I try. I love my mind. I don't know about my body, but I love my mind. Oh, you know, even it gets me in trouble sometimes. I'm not sure about that. I love it most of the time. And the other times it gets me in trouble. Where was I? Structuralism. I don't know where I was going, but I know the examples I think I'm going to go to for why sometimes structural issues are a problem. Because it goes back to authority. My issue with that also comes back to authority. Because this top-down processing is how authority structures expect you to learn. Right? This is common. They expect the bottom up to come on your own or not come at all. Right? It's actually easier for a lot of if they don't, right? It's actually easier if they don't, because top-down processing allows the narrative to be controlled. Bottom-up processing doesn't allow somebody else to seize and take control of the narrative, right? Because when you think about it and see all the different parts, you can see the biases. You can see where this is bullshit. You can see where that's bullshit. You can see where this doesn't add up, even though they're saying it does. You know, oh, you're saying this, but this actually is what happens. And it's like, why is that? And it's like, well, what we say is still true. It's like those two things cannot simultaneously be true unless you're willing to accept both of them at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, okay, that might be true, but this is also true. And this being true doesn't always make this not be true. Right? And this isn't quite as true as you seem to think it is, it's just generally speaking. I know I'm speaking in abstract terms, but I hope somebody's getting something out of this. If nobody else, just me. I get something out of doing this. That's why I do it. I don't get that much traction. I think in total I've made 30 some podcasts, if I'm guessing. In total. Only now put my face in it. And yeah. Not really taken off. Have I stopped yet? No, because for some reason I feel like there's something I gotta say. For some reason I feel like I need this microphone. For some reason I feel like eventually I'm gonna make it somewhere, or eventually, excuse me, I'm gonna say something that needs to be said that nobody else is saying. Maybe I already am and nobody's listening. I don't know. But that's why I'm here. Because I can't just sit back and act like all these problems in the world aren't things I see. I can't just sit back and act like the problems I see in the world don't exist. And I can't just sit back. Well, the land of the free gets treated like the land of the controlled and the compliant. At least don't pretend it's something else. At least if you're going to corral people and control them, tell them that's what you're doing. Don't frame it as them being free, right? Because this is something that really grinds my gears. Because I look around, because my brain looks for patterns, and it also looks for systems of control, and how to avoid them, right? Not just systems of control. I actively avoid systems which try to control me. It's a problem with authority. And I look around and I can't not see it everywhere, right? I see it everywhere around. I see it absolutely everywhere around. And, what do you do about that? I can't just change the world into seeing strict authority structures. I can talk about it because it's just ridiculous. What's even worse? What's even worse than that is how it gets used as a tool for propaganda. I'll explain what I mean by that. Because here's something this is kind of an opinion I hold on things, right? I think war is bad. I know, fucking crazy, right? Oh, we shouldn't go around and kill each other and target hospitals and bomb civilians and call it casualties of war. Or kill people. Kill soldiers. Even soldiers are people too, And yet, this is what we do. I'm a dove, even though I sit on here and talk like I'm confrontational and angry, which I kind of am, but I think disagreement's fine. I think argument's fine. I think killing each other is where we're supposed to draw the line. Maybe that's where we're supposed to draw the line. But because people are sitting on the other side of the world, are they really people if we can't see them? If we don't watch them die, is it really happening? That's how it seems like people think to me. And it's kind of true. People aren't aware of things which aren't brought into their awareness. If you're not ever seeing it, then you don't ever know about it. But at the same time, it's like, does that really fix anything? If I'm aware of something going on the other side, there's a reason it's happening on the other side of the world, and it's because I'm not going to see it, right? And somehow, but me seeing it doesn't actually change whether or not it's happening or not, right? It's still happening. But what gets me is when these things get fought in the name of freedom, American freedom, and I look over here and I don't even see freedom here. I don't see what freedom should be. I see people controlled into doing things that are disguised as freedom and told they're freedom. In America, you're only as free as the money you have. And to get the money, you got to be a slave to it, right? That's the problem. As much as I'd love to make money off doing something like this, I don't. Right? And it sucks. It sucks. It doesn't feel right. It just doesn't. And that's called freedom, And we send young men and women. I know casualties aren't that common now because of drone warfare and all that shit, not for Americans or whatever. But we fight, but other people are casualties of war. Other citizens, citizens of the world are casualties of war. And we go over and we fight and people die for the sake of freedom, while we don't even have it here. It's make it make sense, And because then you start asking questions like, well, why does it happen like that? Why? Oh, if we're not actually getting freedom from it, why are we fighting it? Gee, I wonder who funds politicians' campaigns. Gee, I wonder what lobbyists do. Gee, I wonder if that's a good system or not. I'd say it's probably not. I'm saying you're going to get war as long as you have money going into war that is then used to convince people to fund the wars. That seems like a cycle, a loop, a system which feeds into itself, and it's kind of impossible to just destroy or get out of. Kind of hard to break. It's hard to break the loops, and it's a loop which has been going on for a while now. I'm honestly not sure how much you can do about it, but hey, whatever. It's what it is. And I'm not saying defeatist in that. I'm saying it's just really hard to change something like that. Especially in a state of being controlled. At the end of the day, I just want to feel like I'm free, and I don't. I spent most of my life feeling like I was controlled and unable to be myself. Now I grew up, and welcome to more of that, Feels like a lot. Feels fuck. Because I was thinking there would come a point where I actually got to feel free. Where I actually got to feel like I truly enjoyed my life, like I love my life, like I'm living life. And at no point in my life have I ever felt that way. And when I have the resources to maybe feel that way, I don't have the energy or the time. I just don't. And when I have the time and resources, I don't have them. Or when I have the time and energy, I don't have the resources. It's like a double bind. And I don't see a clear way out of it. I don't. Not without sacrificing who I am. Which is something I don't want to do. Because if I let go of all that I am and become something else, then who am I? Who am I? Where do I fit? I don't even get to have the one thing I stand on. I don't even get to have the one thing I want. I don't even get to be free or in control. What do I even have? Because life seems drained of all agency. That life doesn't seem like one I want to live. So I fight so I don't have to. Or I fight to not have to, because the trap. So once you start living that way, it's really hard to stop. I don't even know what this was about. Authority? Structure? I'll find some name for it. But if you've listened this far, thank you. I don't expect it, but thank you. I've been Alex. This has been the Lost Souls Podcast. I hope you got something out of this that's going to help you in your day or your life or the way or your emotions or whatever. I hope that you found this enjoyable in some way. I wish you the best and that you find joy and happiness, and I'm sending whatever positive intentions I can send, and if you receive them, then great, because I do believe stuff like that works. Call me crazy. Anyway, peace.